Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. I remember '95, I was about that tall, and the wall between East and West Germany had just come down, and so much has changed, hasn't it? You know, one of the things I sensed this morning when I went through the halls, there is a little bit of AI FOMO going on, I think, right? There's a lot of fear of missing out. It's like everywhere. And what I'd like to do in the next 30 minutes is talk a little bit about where Genesys is today, what the strategy is going forward, and why that led us to invent a new method to measure the quality of customer as well as employee experiences. So just a quick background on the evolution. When I joined 6 years ago, Genesys was essentially a prem company. Riding the legacy that we just heard about, 90% of our bookings were premise software. Almost all of the revenue was from premise software bookings and maintenance. And we had 5 active code lines in development for innovation. Fast forward to 2019, we get a new CEO, new leadership, and the company makes a shift from prem to cloud first. So we have more and more invested into what's now known as Genesys Cloud. Some may remember it as Pure Cloud some time ago. And we have really doubled down on this. And in 2022, we made the decision to stop innovation on every other code line and focus all our creative powers onto Genesys Cloud, all of those 1,500 engineers that we have all around the world. That's a significant investment into CX. It's larger than any other one of our competitors. And what that means is that today, almost 100% of our bookings are cloud. We have moved thousands of customers who used to run Genesys premise software onto Genesys Cloud. And for every workday, we take about 2 to 3 customers from our on-premise competition into Genesys Cloud as well. So today, this is essentially a market between 2 companies, to be frank. We call it the 2-horse race between NICE and Genesys, because the market is about cloud and these 2 companies have matured. I'm sure there's going to be more companies on this Magic Quadrant in the coming years. Some of the big ones have decided to enter our market. What a wonderful validation of the size and attractiveness of this market as a software vendor, but also a good sign for customers everywhere because they can appreciate more and more innovation coming to that market. Now, there are really 3 reasons I believe why Genesys is winning, and I want to quickly summarize what those are. The first one is deeply rooted in the way how this system, Genesys Cloud, has been architected. And it's very, very hard to copy for any vendor, because it's been architected like you would architect a system if you were a startup today. It's microservices, hundreds of them. It's true CI/CD with a killer tool chain to produce a lot of innovation and actually make changes to the production code on a daily basis. We do that actually between 200 and 300 times a day, that we're changing something in the production code. Many, many baby steps versus big releases. So it's ongoing innovation. And that's one of the reasons why today we can offer voice, digital, workforce engagement, AI, all on a single platform in a homogeneous code. It goes so far that even when we acquire a company like Bolt 360 for digital capabilities or Pointillist for journey management, we end up re-implementing it in this development model because it is much easier for our customers to consume. It's one configurator, one UI paradigm, one data scheme, everything coming together, all these systems and all these microservices working as one with identical development models behind it. It's a very, very strong capability, and it means for customers to have much more flexibility in the way how they can actually consume Genesys Cloud. Some start with voice, like what people always did. Some start with digital. Some actually start just implementing new AI capabilities like chatbots. Some start with using employee experience only, and they put that on top of an Avaya or a Cisco system. So a lot of flexibility with this all-in-one approach. And then finally, it's the power of AI, and It's kind of funny because, generative AI is going to solve every problem, right? No, it's all about delivering those use cases that can be used quickly, easily, and we have really emphasized that. There's going to be more about this in a second. So that's what I think why we're winning, and the result of this have been quite staggering. If Genesys Cloud was a company, it'd be the fastest growing SaaS company out there, growing faster than ServiceNow, Salesforce, or Twilio. It took us about 3.5 years to go from $100 million of revenue with Genesys Cloud to $1 billion. As of today, Genesys Cloud is about $1.3 billion in annual recurring revenue, growing at 50% year on year. So this thing is really, really successful. We have now reached more than 5,000 customers, more than 1 million agents on the system, and it keeps growing. Now, obviously, the strategy has been working so far, but in order to find out what we're going to emphasize going forward, we need a good problem to solve. Every good strategy starts with a great problem. And the problem we're addressing with what we do and how we apply our innovation capability is to truly focus on the loyalty crisis. And the loyalty crisis is not just the crisis of customers who are defecting early, quickly, and have no patience for you making any mistakes anymore. It's also the crisis on the workforce side of people who do not condone bad experiences as employees any longer as well. And there's various statistics, but the attrition rates between 30 and almost 50% in some industries of agents are really staggering. So it's math from hell, not because I'm adding up 2 percentages and resulting in a dollar amount. It's math from hell because these are real significant issues. And the funny thing is that some people believe that AI is going to take all these issues away, and I do not actually agree. I think AI is also causing some of those issues going forward. So let me give you an example. We create automation, and that's what companies really lean into. It's all about experience automation. How can I save money by not having an employee taking this call or engaging in this chat? How can I automate it? And at Genesys, the growth rate in bots and voice bots is 4 times a year, 5 times a year that the usage is increasing. So it's really a successful business for us, but it cannot be the whole equation. Here's why. Imagine you do something very simple like a password reset. And for all of you in the room who are in the tech sector, that's like daily business, no problem at all. Give me just a link, give me a bot, I can reset my password, no problem. If you pose the same problem to my father-in-law at the age of 82, who's not a digital native, that is a major head scratcher. He will want to be talked through it. And trust me, I know it. He lives in Germany, I live in California, and I do more IT remote consulting than I want. Things like, okay, now hit return, R-E-T-U, or no, the one with the funny arrow, right? Okay. So that's the kind of stuff that's going on. So in other words, an experience that works perfectly well to be automated for one person, that same experience needs to be different for someone else based on the context from where they come from. And so this is why we invented a concept that is bigger than automation. And we call it experience orchestration. And there has been a lot of development going on, as you can see across this cycle here, and apologies to the sponsors for messing up the template. But essentially, there's 2 big use cases that we summarize under AI-powered experience orchestration. The first one is the one that everyone goes about right now, which is reduce cost, drive efficiency. There's 2 ways that that's happening. At 10 o'clock, you see virtual agents. So that's one big area. The other one is the co-pilots. That's the other area. And we've all heard about this, using generative AI to do summarization, all those kind of things, automatic wrap-up codes after the call. Yes, we do all these things. Saves a minute or 2 with every conversation, and across the year has significant opportunity for savings potential. That's happening, absolutely. And that's where most people start. But what they miss is the understanding of what does the end-to-end journey look like. And so what we've taken on as the problem we want to solve is to truly focus on the end-to-end journey of a customer, all the way from learning about the company to actually renewing their subscription. And on the employee side, everything from recruiting with the company and being onboarded to development, performance, and everything, and maybe eventually being offboarded. So this idea of orchestrating, of optimizing the journey and being personalized in those journeys and understanding what it takes to make those experiences superior, that's really what AI experience orchestration is about. And I want to go through this clockwise to give you a quick idea of how we use AI in all those different areas to create better personalized experiences. The first one is journey management. This is a capability that we have created out of the acquisition of Pointillist 2 years ago. What happens is that we have many, many connectors that collect events across the enterprise, and they can come from within the contact center or from outside of the contact center. They come from an IoT device, they come from a CRM or ERP system, what have you. And there is billions of events that are being consumed. And then, like you look at a traffic map with Google Maps at rush hour, you can see where the red traffic is and the yellow and where all the congestion is. You can actually view the entire experience end to end, and where you see people getting stuck, where people run in loops, in order to help you understand where you could actually make improvements. And those improvements are being recommended by an AI algorithm. The second area of personalization is a composable desktop. You can actually bring everything on a single pane of glass, and the user, the employee, can personalize it, and you can bring in things like your ticketing system, your ServiceNow, your Salesforce system, in a way that it actually is captured in the same user experience. We talked about the co-pilot. Workforce engagement, super important as more and more agents work from home. We're using AI to understand gamification. Is the right product pitched, right? Are they sticking to compliance rules? All those kinds of things. Also in terms of scheduling and forecasting, we're using AI capabilities, again, to personalize. All the way to using mobile capabilities to give the employees the option to start trading shifts online and rerun those very flexible and fast AI-powered scheduling algorithms in the background again. Work automation is the ability to go beyond the contact center by involving people in the back office. Most cases, when they have to approve something, let's say there's a credit that goes beyond a specific threshold, so you need extra approval by someone from the back office. Again, this routing can be done by AI, optimizing who's actually getting a specific work item to be resolved, and then bring that back to the customer or the employee. All these systems use services that we have created natively. Genesys has been working with large language models for about 4 to 5 years already, but we're also leveraging systems that we source from other companies, obviously. Open SaaS infrastructure, everything that I've talked about, all these connections come from more than 3,000 APIs that are being invoked 53 billion times every month. So this is not just a solution, this is actually a platform where people build on top and leverage the data that comes out of it. All those connected systems I talked about, including what we do with, for example, Salesforce, where we've now integrated not just voice, but all the digital channels, the UI, the presence of the employee, and call. Analytics and insights help you understand where exactly the trends are in terms of your products. You can actually understand the skills that you may want to expand for specific employees, things like that. We talked about virtual agents, and obviously, all this capability is channel-less, meaning you can switch channels dynamically, you are proactive in your conversations, you can create a dialogue once, and then you render it into voice or into a chat or into a text message conversation or into a social media conversation. So that's really what's happening. And this is how we can optimize the experience end-to-end and create more loyalty, so we have more revenue in the future from those customers. And we have less attrition of our employees. This is the cycle that I kind of explained. It's all about the analysis initially, the no-code environment to create new experiences, and then to execute that as part of the Genesys Cloud platform. Now, that's great. So I told you where Genesys is. I told you the emphasis on creating end-to-end personalized experiences. But the question remains, what are we actually optimizing? And that leads me to the second part of the conversation. We all very well know all these KPIs that describe business outcomes. So average handling time, first contact resolution, customer churn rate, cost per call, customer lifetime value. These are all important. They're measurements of both efficiency and loyalty, but they're outcomes. And yes, maybe sometimes we can make some prediction if the average handling time of an employee goes down, maybe there's something to look for. But what we have tried for a long time is to understand the connection between a measurement of the quality of the conversation, of the experience, into these business results. How are they connected? Can there be a connection? And can we optimize our business results by better understanding the experience and optimizing the experience this way? And so that's when things like Net Promoter Score come to mind, like Customer Effort Score or CSAT, which is used a lot. So who's using NPS? Can I have a show of hand? All right. Who's using CSAT? Show of hand. Okay. And who's using customer effort as a measurement? No, not many. So this is interesting because the problem is that these quality measurements do not really work from our experience, and here's why. It's like having a stopwatch without a hand. I think Net Promoter Score is a vanity KPI, to be honest. I think senior management has heard about it, understands it, and that's why they want it. But the question is, what do you do with that measurement, and are you really using it to optimize the performance or optimize the experience? So most of these measurements are inward-looking. And the key problem is that they assume the question. So can you ask more egoistically than on a scale from 0 to 10, how likely are you referring me to your friend? And you should try this question with your spouse tonight when you come home. It's Valentine's Day, and based on the circumstances under which you ask that question, you might get a very interesting discussion, right? So you cannot assume the question. It's also isolated. You're asking the same question in many different contexts. Wouldn't it be much more intelligent to understand what matters to people and then ask the question based on where they are in their journey? And it's also the reason why most of those are inconclusive. So here we go. The result of this is that people are abandoning that promoter score. So what we've done is we've gotten together and we've tried to invent a methodology that is more people-centric, actionable, and end-to-end. And people-centric means that we don't assume the question. It's essentially using a bit more empathy by measuring, when we measure experiences, by first making an effort to truly understand what matters as part of a specific experience to an employee, to a contact center agent, to a consumer in the banking industry, or to someone who is connecting with their insurance. The measurement needs to be end-to-end. We need to understand the entire conversation, the entire interaction between us and the customer based on where the customer is in their life cycle, what they're trying to do, or based on what the total experience is for the employee. And they should be actionable. We should be able to understand how are we doing with respect to others and where do we gain the most leverage. And obviously we want it to be relevant so we can connect it to business KPIs and draw the right conclusions. So this is what the Experience Index does. It has 4 phases. The first 2 phases are things that Genesys does once, and then obviously provides this as a service to customers. The first thing we do is we talk to 1,000+ people to truly understand what matters to them and how much. This information feeds a scoring engine, and that scoring engine is then used to actually benchmark how employees or customers in a specific industry are viewing their experiences across all different types of vendors or all different types of employers. What we then do in the third step is we are able to actually apply this methodology to a specific company and show you how what you do is different from other companies in that industry. And then we can draw conclusions of what actually should change and how do we improve your business. Okay. Let's take an example. What we've done here is for contact center employees, to make it very specific and relevant for this audience. We have actually gone and made the people research, and we looked at all these 6 different areas of the experience, from onboarding to the work environment, like the day-to-day work, performance, compensation, the customer interactions, how they work, the technologies that they're using, the availability of information, the actual engagement agents have with the company in terms of motivation, connection, culture, their development opportunities, so how does their professional career actually evolve, resources they have, and their well-being, the availability of mental health resources, trust in the workplace, and so forth. So that's the research we've done, and it's a very standardized methodology, talking again to 1,000 people more and more to truly figure out what matters here. This happens through interviews, focus groups, things like that. We do this every year to understand if our questions are still up to date or if something has shifted. So for example, when we started doing this during the pandemic, there was a question that was rated very, very high, which was, my manager personally cares about me. That weight has gone down significantly after the pandemic in favor of other things like I'm able to work remotely, even after the pandemic. So these weights, the questions are shifting over time. We keep track on it. But the question is, if the questions are always changing and the weights are changing, how do we even compare ourselves and how do we show an improvement over longer periods of time? And that's why we've started to create the benchmarking. And benchmarking means that we go out and we are asking that question to, again, thousands and thousands of people. In this case, we have 25,000 touch points where we understand per industry, per job description, what matters to people. And when we then calculate the scores, we always calculate scores relative to the benchmark. So you can see if you're in a specific area, like your workplace experience, are you above the benchmark or below? And you can track that number over time. Now in this case, something that was striking was that when it comes to the place where people work, where agents work, in office, remotely, or hybrid, there's obviously a lower score for remote workers in general. Their experience is rated lower, and specifically because they have a harder time finding stuff. So that's the benchmark, that's the high level. And when you then go in and you can actually compare your own score with the benchmark, that's where the insight comes from. Many times, for example, we've had arguments with customers that said, well, you know, you're asking about, am I being compensated fairly? Obviously, you get a bad result. No. It doesn't mean that, because the benchmark is lower for that question overall. It's really about how are you doing relative to others. And by the way, fixing that perception not necessarily means you have to increase the salary. What we also saw is that by better explaining the benefits that employees get, that score can actually improve. Here's all the healthcare you get. Here's all the free days you have on top of, you know, what is legally required and so forth. So those benchmarks truly help to put things in perspective, and then when you actually apply them, when something's wrong, it's really screaming at you. So this is a real customer example, and it's about the experience in terms of staffing, or that staffing is one of the 25 questions here that are being asked. And the fact that my team is properly staffed was really out of whack for the social media team. And the reason why that was coming up was essentially that Facebook as a channel had just exploded. And so when you look at the actual consumption data in Genesys Cloud, you can see some of those reasons why, right? But that's an easy one. There are some that are much harder to detect, and we'll get to them in a moment. Like this one. In terms of bringing new people on board with the company, one of the questions is, I'm fully prepared to do my job after onboarding. And the sales team actually, again, really stands out. So they feel like they would like to know more. They would like to be better trained to do a better job with customers. In this case, the fix was relatively easy because they had already bought a license that allowed them to use the coaching and learning capabilities of Genesys Cloud. We just turned that on, and we actually saw that score improve significantly. So those are some of the things that are happening. And what I was most amazed about is when we connected the experience index back to business KPIs. So what you see here is for 4 different questions, and there's obviously more, we created a chart for each of those questions that correlates employee retention with the employee index scores. And every one of those dots is actually an organization within Genesys. So a specific sales team, a specific service team, a specific engineering team, and so forth. And so you've got like 20-something dots here, each representing 300 people or so. And when you actually create those correlations, you can see some of those are really correlating well, some of those are really correlating weak. But the best correlation we got was an R² value of 4. When you take and build the same correlation, not with an individual question, but with the experience index, the R² value increases to 0.61. So more than 60% of the deviation can be explained through the experience index. In other words, attrition is not a single issue problem. Attrition often is the combination of a variety of different issues. And so when we can address those issues in a structured way, in a repeatable way, in a way where we're capturing the data on an ongoing basis, not just once a year, we truly have an optimization algorithm at hand that can actually reduce attrition, or attrition with customers as well, not just employees, obviously. One of the most insightful quotes we had from customers is from Tom Mullins from Inflow CX, who talked about, it really flips the script. We're not making any assumptions. We're going about it in a scientific way. Now, is it a great achievement for Genesys to come up with this methodology? Honestly, no. But it's awesome to have this huge database of benchmarks, of industry data that's being renewed on an annual basis to give people guidance as to, where should you focus on? How are you different? Where are you good enough and where are you falling short? And that's truly, truly powerful. Usually, when we go and show this to customers, we do a first run, and then 2 things happen. The first thing that happens is that the data comes back, and whoever we had a connection with, let's say the director of CX, comes back and says, I have to show this to my VP. VP sees the data, comes back, says, I have to show this to my SVP. This is amazing. So obviously, the value of this data is truly significant, but what also happens is that the customers usually say, I want to do this every quarter. I want to see how we're evolving. I want to understand how to continue to optimize these experiences, not just for customers, but also for employees. So some of the use cases we have had was people who used this methodology when they were still on premise, and then used the same methodology when they had moved to the cloud. Obvious improvement. We had customers who wanted to benchmark their CPOs because one CPO did perform much worse than the others, and nobody knew why. So they asked the agents about their perceptions and what works. And they found that with one CPO, they had a very hard time actually escalating an issue. And so that's the way how they resolve this. We've seen this happen, or we've seen this used after the introduction of new channels or new AI capabilities. How has the experience changed for the employees when we have a bot that takes care of 50% of the inquiries and this agent is stuck with all the hard problems? What does that do to their experience? All right. Now, we can analyze employee and customer experiences with this. We talked about this. Genesys itself has been using this for 3 years. We actually reported to our board. We have 4 KPIs at the highest level of the company, which is about revenue growth, profitability, the sustainability score, and our experience score with our customers and our employees. That's how important this is to us. So in the future, where we're looking at is obviously creating that connection between CX and EX more closely. We are at the perfect spot to do this because we know who talks to whom about what. And we can make those connections about the satisfaction of that customer and how does that connect to the satisfaction of that employee. So that's work that's going on. We should be able to predict scores rather than ask for a score. Specifically when it comes to customers, they usually tell us what's wrong. Hey, you should solve this problem more quickly. I don't want to wait 3 weeks, right? So we can extract sentiment, we can extract when a customer is actually hitting one of those points, and we can predict scores from that way. We can improve data collection triggers. So right now, for example, we send an onboarding an onboarding question 3 months after an employee has logged into Genesys Cloud for the first time, but we could take that data from HR and get probably more precise results. We can integrate into CRM, understand better when to ask a specific question. Generative AI can be used in a variety of ways. One of the ways we've used it is to go through large numbers of verbatim and to extract themes, to then go back into focus groups and validate those findings. And then obviously AI-powered recommendations. All right. If you're intrigued, this is available, not just Genesys, for sure, but if you want to learn more, there's a little QR code for you. The Experience Index is also available on the App Foundry, so something to use for you. We put great effort into making sure that we maintain the privacy of that data, because you want to be able to slice and dice that data in any shape or form. You want to know by tenure, by seniority, by job title, by region, by team maybe. We don't see that data. We just have the scoring engine, and when you go into those analytical tools, you can actually merge those two things together based on a unique identifier that you put on the data, and we don't know who's behind it. And what we also do is that we usually don't go below 5 or 6 people when we are doing the slicing and dicing to protect people's privacy. That's another key concern. But if you're interested, explore it today. If you have any thoughts or questions, find me later. I'm around. Thank you very much.